All right. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including iTunes. So don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. You can say whatever you want to say. Just make sure it comes with a 5-star review. You can say Steve is an imbecile and he doesn't know what he's talking about, but his guests are pretty good, and I've got a good example of that right now. John Whitaker, better known as Big Game Boomer, is joining us on the show today. How you doing, man?
Good. How's it going, Steve?
Man, going pretty well. Now, if I remember correctly, you've been doing this for, 12, 18 months, somewhere in that ballpark?
Yeah, about February of 2021, I believe,
Okay.
when I kind of got up and rolling.
What was the impetus for getting it up and running?
Yeah, so I had never used. I had. It says like I had an account since like 2012. But I had never really used Twitter, and I took the week off of Thanksgiving of 2020, and it was COVID, so there was nothing to do. So I just started getting online on Twitter and just seeing all these fans arguing with each other, and so I started getting in on it. And before you know it, like I'm arguing with Desmond Howard, and he's arguing back at me, slandering OU, saying all kinds of stuff. And so from there, I was like, this is really cool. And once the season was over, I just had some ideas, like putting some graphics out there. I'd seen some other people make some graphics, and I put a list out that was like more schools with more wins in Texas over the last 10 years. And that went kind of crazy. And then ever since then, I just have been doing something almost every day. It's July of 2022. This has been going on for a while now. It's crazy. I had like 50 followers at the time, and it's gone quite up since then.
Yeah, I think you're over 45,000 at the moment.
45,000, yeah, on Twitter, and then almost 50,000 on Instagram.
That is really cool, man. Also, you'll see whenever you guys come to the SEC that one of our greatest traditions is Tennessee fans claiming they're back. When you mix that with Texas fans claiming they're back, I mean, the UT possibilities from both teams is out of this world.
Yeah, I was about to say that sounds a lot like Texas every year, saying that they're back.
Yeah. Tennessee was the SEC equivalent of Texas when it comes to that, and they just happen to do it. So, how do you come about a list? Let's say, for instance, I saw the other day is like best Mexican restaurant in each town. How do you come by that? How do you research that?
So, like, what people don't understand is there is a massive surface beneath Twitter, like a huge network of college fans, and so I'm amongst that group. And yeah, I haven't been to every college town. The college towns that I've been to and I've had Mexican food, I have my opinion. But I will get, say, Ole Miss fan, hey, if you're going to get Mexican in Oxford, where are you going to go? And they'll give me their suggestion. And then that's kind of how I roll with it. And it's hilarious when, you post that and, over 2 million people look at it and they're arguing, because there's never a right answer. It's just an opinion. And it just makes for great debate. I mean, it's fun there's so much garbage on Twitter that people argue about. Like, let's argue about fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're never right, because I have actually, basically, I've stolen the idea from you, and I'm doing top 5 Ole Miss lists on my TikTok page.
Yeah.
And it's never, somebody always chimes in that you're absolutely incorrect, and this is why, and it doesn't really matter either way whether they are, because at the end of the day, it's just my opinion on what's going on. But I say that to say this. What is your favorite list that you have done?
Favorite list, and this was kind of when I was just kind of getting started. I did the best pizza joint in every college town, and kind of doing my research, asking people, and I put Chuck E. Cheese for Alabama. And I mean, true story, one of my relatives went to Alabama, and I was like, I don't think she really ate pizza. And I was like, what's the best pizza joint? And she's like, well, there's a Chuck E. Cheese pretty close to campus, but other than that, I don't know. So I just kind of ran with Chuck E. Cheese. And before that, Chuck E. Cheese was trending on Twitter all day, and I mean, everyone was just making these jokes about Alabama. Nick Saban, that's where he takes his recruits, to Chuck E. Cheese, and it was pretty fun. That was really when it all kind of got started.
Now, I can't remember if it was Oklahoma or Oklahoma State, so forgive me there. But Laquan Treadwell was being recruited. This is whenever he was coming through and taking an official visit. I think it was Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State had a chance to really get him, but they took him to a Panda Express. That was the recruit meal, a Panda Express. And
really?
that ended up being the thing that pushed him to Ole Miss, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think Ole Miss is a much better food scene than Stillwater, Oklahoma. Yeah. So.
Yeah, but Oklahoma State does have the same mascot, literally, as New Mexico State. It's the same guy. Like New Mexico State pays licensing fees.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they pay Oklahoma State to use that mascot. Same with Wyoming as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. It's not that hard to draw a cowboy, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be that hard. Although, okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a list on camera today. I have not given you any time to prepare for this.
Okay.
But I'm going to ask you the top 5 places that you're looking forward to visiting once Oklahoma comes into the SEC. SEC venues.
Okay. Number 1 got to be Oxford. Definitely. Number 2 is, I guess, Baton Rouge. I've heard great things about Baton Rouge. 3, gosh, man, that's tough. Because I've been to Athens a million times. I guess you could throw Auburn in there. Never actually been to Auburn. Then 4, Gainesville, just because you got to experience the swamp. And then I guess 5, Knoxville.
Okay. Yeah, Knoxville is really cool. Now, whenever you go there, you're going to look at it, and it looks like a giant Tinker Toy set or an Erector set from like back in the 50s, because that's just the way it was built. And you know, trying to fix it up is just kind of putting lipstick on a pig, but it is really, really big, and it looks really, really big. And as Ole Miss found out this past year, whenever they're rowdy and they're drunk and there's just a ton of stuff to play for, that place can be that can be a hard place to play, because they can kind of cauldron a little bit. Yeah. So, tell me a little bit, now that I got you on the things, like, what does Ole Miss fans need to know about OU?
I mean, I think that OU, I mean, they fit right into the SEC blueprint when we're talking about fan bases. I mean, outside of the SEC, they're one of the most rabid fan bases out there. I mean, huge presence on social media, travel extremely well. Like, I think the first couple years when OU's in the SEC, you were going to see droves of OU fans go to every single road game, because they already travel well. Great tale, but they're also very welcoming. It's not a very hostile crowd. Like, you know, if Ole Miss fans come up to Norman, everyone's very welcoming, tailgate wise. I mean, it's a good fan base. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but I think it fits right into the SEC, and you know, everyone I know is looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it a lot, especially. I haven't heard anybody ask him about it since it's said, but I'd like to know what Marcus Dupree has to say about all this. Working down in Mississippi, you know, as a former OU player that kind of spurned the SEC back in the day, I'm curious of what his thoughts might be.
Best that never was. That's Marcus Dupree.
Yeah, he actually, like, you watch that for 30 for 30 and you realize that Marcus Dupree was so good, he got Barry Switzer out of the wishbone. That's how good of a running back he was.
That 30 for 30, I watched that because, of course, I wasn't even alive when he was playing, but, man, he was just a beast. Just ran over people like crazy.
Yeah, I don't know what was in the water back then, but that was Mississippi's version of, like, Bo Jackson and Herschel Walker, and all those guys were kind of around at the same time. And to me, it's just really interesting to think about, because those are like super athletes that just completely changed the way the game was played. Now we're all spread offense, throw the ball around the park. But back in the day, it was like 3 yards in a cloud of dust for everybody except those teams. Those teams were 5 yards in a cloud of dust.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah, it's really cool. I hate to get off on a tangent about Marcus Dupree, but yeah,
he was the man.
Yeah, he was a dude. And even after the ACL, and that was back when an ACL injury was kind of a death sentence for a football player. But he tried to like do the New Orleans Breakers of the USFL, and he went to the Los Angeles Rams, but he just didn't have the thing that made him so special. Mainly because if you look at the rugs they played on back then, it was like just basically playing on concrete, and you had Oklahoma with like a 24-inch crown in the middle of the field and sloped. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. No, crazy. Different times for sure. The game has come a long way.
Okay. As an Oklahoma fan, and I'm not going to rag you too much about the baseball national championship, but I had to bring it up once.
Hey, it's all right. We didn't even deserve to. No one was expecting us to make it that far. So, hats off to you guys because you all were preseason number one. So,
Yeah, and
congrats.
Those pitchers, got drafted very high. It was very impressive. It just, you guys kind of ran into a buzzsaw that weekend. But tell people what they need to expect from Texas. We always make fun of Texas. The Texas is back, Tennessee's back, all of that stuff. As an Oklahoma fan, what does SEC fan need to be ready for Texas?
You're going to see Texas fans coming into the SEC very entitled, hugely entitled fan base. That they're going to expect the SEC to bow down to whatever they want because that's all that's happened when they've been in the Big 12. Bob Bowlesby and the gang just bowed down and let them have the Longhorn Network. I don't think that would fly in the SEC. They basically can get away with anything they want in the Big 12 because they're Texas. But when they're going to the SEC, they're not the biggest. They're a huge brand, but they're not the top dog. So Greg Sankey's not going to cater to whatever they want. Like I sure as heck hope that the horns down penalty gets tossed away because I think that's a bunch of crap. So it's a very entitled fan base, and I know I have a lot of Texas fans, but they just expect to be catered to because they're Texas. There's this image of we have decades of success, and they haven't done anything lately. All the SEC fans I've talked to are excited about OU coming, and are like, God, we don't want to deal with Texas. Because they're very high maintenance fan base.
Yeah, and we've noticed about A&M as well that is absolutely a cult. It is the most bizarre thing, and if Texas is extreme like they were the opposite way, both of those are going to be so annoying. But I tell you what, whenever Texas comes into the league, the first Thanksgiving when Texas A&M and Texas play again, I'm watching that game. No matter what else is going on, that Thanksgiving night, everybody be quiet. I'm watching that because I haven't seen people that just hate each other like they seem to hate each other. And I'm Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Like, we invented hostility. Yeah. But Texas and A&M, there's some venom there.
They hate each other, and they've been ducking each other for years playing. Mm-hmm. So I hope that with the scheduling in the SEC that they get matched up every single year. That's a game that needs to be seen every year. I don't care if the ADs don't like it. Greg Sankey and the scheduling committee needs to put those two together every year.
Yeah, and just to say, like Texas wants to be catered to and all that, they're entitled. Yeah, and in the SEC there are 6 Texases. So they're not going to be able to big boy absolutely everybody in the conference because Alabama and LSU and Georgia and Florida, they're going to be like, calm down,
Exactly. Yeah. That's one of the most things I'm looking most forward to is just the Texas arrogance, and I think a lot of that's going to go away pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think it's good that they decided to give up the Longhorn Network to come into the SEC.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. Because I have a video on my site. It's kind of a history of realignment. And it kind of started before the Longhorn Network, but the Longhorn Network really kicked everything off.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we just kind of went through it chronologically and everything, and it just Texas starting bullying people into voting down a Big 12 network so they could start their own. Somehow they agreed to do that, and all of a sudden Nebraska bolts out, but Nebraska voted against the network just like everybody else because they thought they could get their own network, but they couldn't. Yeah. And it just turned into a whole bunch of chaos, and now USC and UCLA is in the Big 10 basically because Texas wanted their own network.
Yeah. No, I tweeted that a couple weeks ago. I was like, yeah, we're all arguing about this now, but you can basically trace all of these moves back to the Longhorn Network. Mm-hmm. So blame Texas for a lot of this realignment that's going on right now.
Yeah, and Greg Sankey at SEC Media Days in his speech, he basically fired shots at the Big Ten over and over about geographic footprint of the conference because that Piscataway, New Jersey to Los Angeles road trip twice a year is going to be.
I mean, like at least OU and Texas, it makes sense. Like, mm-hmm. I mean, it's just you're expanding. Like, I mean, Fayetteville's like 3 hours from here. I mean, you can still drive to a lot of these places, but I mean, Nebraska is the closest school to those LA schools, and it's like 2,000 miles away. I mean, it would have been one thing if they added like Notre Dame or Virginia, and it just made because I like the regionality of college football. Mm-hmm. This just it makes it's a money grab, and that's pretty much all there is to it.
Yeah, and people that say Oregon and Washington to the SEC, they're just not paying attention and just throwing stuff at the wall because the SEC would never take either of those two teams. I think if the SEC expanded, if that happened, you could see a team like North Carolina, you could see Florida State, you could see Miami, you could see Virginia, even Kansas. And it would make sense footprint-wise, maybe not necessarily football, but if you needed somebody to get to 20, Kansas is a basketball brand, there'd be worse ones to get. But it would be neighboring states at a maximum, like Kansas and Missouri. That it would be worth it to have that game back.
Absolutely. That's a game we definitely need.
Yeah. People don't realize the hatred that comes with Kansas and Missouri because they're not good at the same time very often. But that goes back to the Civil War. There's all kinds of hate in that rivalry.
Oh yeah, no, those schools need to be playing every year for sure.
Mm-hmm. And eventually, my idea. By the way, before I let you go, I had an idea of like if we're going to do this super conference thing, if we were going to do this, we need to the SEC just go through and get basically 8 teams out of the SEC, grab a couple of teams out of the Big 12, and set it up with pods to where you have a Big 8 division with Oklahoma State, Missouri, Kansas, those guys in a pod. You've got a Southwest division with Texas A&M, and some schools that would fit down there. And then you have the OG SEC and the OG ACC, and that is your super conference because the pods actually becomes what the conferences actually was at one time.
Yeah. No, sign me up. Sign me up for that. I like it.
Yeah, because to me, it drives me absolutely bonkers to think that a quarter of the Big 8 is going to be in the SEC. That one's just weird for me.
Stupid.
As somebody that watched on Fridays Oklahoma and Nebraska back in the days whenever they would just beat the heck out of each other, and the final score would be 13-12. One team running the I formation, one team running the wishbone, but they're essentially running the same offense, and just kind of imposing their will down the field. That just became a yearly thing for me. And that's what the Big 8, like back in the days when Colorado and Bill McCartney and those guys running the I-bone with those guys like Eric Bieniemy and that, and Iowa State and Kansas State couldn't beat their way out of a wet paper bag, and then you have Oklahoma State where every now and then they'd have somebody like Barry Sanders and Mike the Mullet at quarterback, and they'd be all right, but most of the time they were kind of in the middle of the pack, and then they were right there with Missouri. But that's the way I think of the Big 8. And I hate that when the Big 12 was created because of all of the SMU and all the cheating that happened in the 80s, the Southwest Conference collapsed. We ended up losing the Big Eight because of that. That's the weird thing that I don't think people realize.
Yeah, no, conference realignment is one of those things that, it just, God, a lot of it you can blame Texas for. Almost all of it, really.
Yes, and by the way, the
they
SEC
always want more money.
Yeah, SEC is not going to ban horns down. Arkansas does horns down on like a random Wednesday in February, even if no Texas fans are around. They're never going to stop doing horns down. They like teach it as a freshman level orientation up in Fayetteville, even though they haven't played regularly.
If they can do horns up, then you should be able to do horns down. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's a taunting penalty.
And the Kentucky-Louisville game, the Kentucky fans does the L down.
And that's not a penalty?
That's not a penalty at all.
Yeah. Good.
Mississippi State does the down fin thing because Ole Miss did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of that, none of that gets a penalty. And, yeah. Texas is going to need some therapy after the first year through the SEC. I'm quite certain.
It's going to be a rude awakening for sure.
Anyway, thank you, John. And get more on the SEC by making Locked On SEC your second listen. Every day, host Chris Gordy and the local experts of Locked On take you across the SEC in 30 minutes or less. Make Locked On SEC your second listen every day. John, thank you so much for stopping by, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. And if you ever need some help with Ole Miss, I'm here to help you out, bud.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, Steve. Yeah, you take it easy.
All right. Have a good one, man.
All right. See ya.
All right, bye.